Hey everyone. So Melanie and I have just a few more recordings left before the end of the year. So help us go out with a bang and submit your questions. We have one episode that is about all of the questions that you get and the conversations you have when people find out that you don't have kids or don't want kids or have no plans to have kids. And the other episode is about the sociology of names. So, what do specific names and general trends in names say about our culture in this moment? That one's going to be amazing. Also, we need to freshen our collection of potential Ask Ann Anything questions. This is a tricky time of year, as you'll hear in today's Ask Ann Anything. So I know you have some quandaries you want to share and get advice on. So you can submit all of those questions at tinyurl.com/culturestudypod or look in the show notes for a link. Can't wait to hear from you. This is the Culture Study Podcast, and I'm Anne Helen Peterson.
I'm Amy Choi, and I am a writer and editor. I live in New York City, far away from Anne, but I'm so excited to be here, and I am the co-founder and editorial director and the host of the Mashup Americans.
Can you tell us a little bit about what the Mashup Americans has covered? Because I think it's like such a fantastic concept.
Yes, thank you. So we started in 2013, and the Mashup Americans, today we would say it is an independent media company and a creative studio. And all of our storytelling, whether it is original work, our podcast, our newsletter, our essays and pieces on our website, or work that we make for clients with our studio, whether that is working with Reese Witherspoon and Hello Sunshine or Peloton or HBO and Netflix, is all about telling American stories and having conversations that really frame any topic that we're kind of tackling through the lens of what it means to be American today, looking at hyphen identities, immigrant culture, and really trying to, in all of our work, center storytelling and on marginalized voices that typically are not and remain still in 2025 not central to the American conversation, and are really the voices leading the future.
And this new season of the Mashup Americans is called Big Korean Energy.
Big Korean energy. You got to say it with the big Korean energy.
And I love that it gets abbreviated as BKE. You're like, does this have BK? Does this have BK? Like, one of my favorite segments of each episode is at the end where you just take seemingly random things like Michael Jordan. Like, does Michael Jordan have big Korean energy?
Huge.
Yes. Whereas, it's so funny. And good. So tell me about the season. I've listened to all of it that is out.
Thank you. Well, it was, first of all, I think a lot of our original content. And so Big Korean Energy was an idea born from Rebecca and I. And she, my co-host, business partner, work wife, I'm a Taurus and her husband is a Taurus. And she's like, I just married
I'm a Taurus.
Everything's making sense. I like things to be in order. And to sort out the world. And I would say one of the kind of impetuses of BKE and looking at what this cultural wave meant was born of that, like trying to make sense as a very elder millennial. Like, I was born in 1979. I'm the first person in my family to be born in the US. Everybody else is from Korea. Yep. I grew up in the Midwest and we didn't have like a huge Korean community. Like, I had my family that was there because my parents were kind of like the anchor immigrants of both sides of their family. So I had a lot of first cousins that were in Chicago. But we weren't part of a church community. So the larger kind of anchor in Korean community then was very much the church. And it wasn't like growing up in LA or New York where there were Korean people everywhere. So I always kind of, and it turns out like in doing this season of the podcast that a lot of people felt that no matter where they grew up, but that Korean people were always like, the classic question that you got growing up in the 80s, even in the 90s was, are you Chinese or Japanese? Be like, no, we're Korean. They're like, what's that? Like, literally, what is that? And then jump 20 years to where it feels like the world is saturated anywhere you look with Koreanness.
Right.
And Rebecca and I, whose job it is, it's very similar to yours, is to study and look and think about culture and what it means and to like make meaning through cultural shifts and political shifts through our storytelling. We were like, this is very big energy, big Korean energy. And then
Yeah.
so I think it was born of that idea and really thinking about what are some tentpole, both like cultural areas as whether it's like music or fashion, but also ways of being like a fandom that were very much
Mm-hmm.
being driven by Korean influence and thinking, okay, so if this is happening and this was really kind of encapsulated, I think even we'd had this idea maybe in 2023 and it has since only grown bigger, right? Like this
Yep.
summer when we were recording was like, and you hear it in the podcast where everybody's talking about K-pop Demon Hunters.
Yep.
Everybody is thinking about this. We're now talking, it's the beginning of November and everywhere you looked on Halloween was Huntrix and Saja Boys and characters from K-pop
Yes.
Demon Hunters. So it's
Yes.
just has continued to kind of snowball. And our like kind of seat from where we were looking at all of this was why? Like why now? And also can we
Mhm.
just all take a beat and be like, what the fuck is happening? And
Right. No, and it's so interesting. And like one time when I was asking for questions for this, someone DM'd me and was like, this is a great opportunity to talk about soft power and
yeah.
how soft power works.
Hmm.
And I think that this, like, we can really connect this to Korean soft power, obviously. And even like, I mean, I'm thinking back in like the late 80s and early 90s, like that was when there was a lot more very vivid Japanese soft power happening.
Hmm.
But the way, and we'll get into this as we go through the episode, like I think that Japan was framed as like this incredible threat to the United States. So there was this oppositionality, and that's directed at China now. What is it about the way that big Korean energy has become so present in American culture that makes it not something that needs to be like isolated and rejected, right? Like
Something to
as
be
something
scared of.
totally. So that like we should talk about that, but we should get to the questions. Okay, so just to tell listeners a little bit of the organization of this episode, it's similar to an episode that we did a while back on the Irishification of pop culture, which was really fascinating. So, we're going to start with some listeners' theories on where this took off.
Mm.
Then, we'll get to some specific trends in their origins. And then, in the end, we're going to talk about what this all means for Koreans and for non Koreans' understanding of the two nations and soft power, et cetera, et cetera. Sound good?
Sounds great.
Great. Okay.
I hope I have
Uh,
responses and answers.
I know, I think you're going to. Because, this first question is actually teeing you up for like the conversation of episode 1 of Big Korean Energy. So
Okay.
let's kick things off with this theory from Youngsa.
I think that the single biggest contributor to what you're calling big Korean energy is Parasite, even more than BTS. The explosion of K-pop was a long way coming, and even when it happened, K-pop was still for cringy teenage girls. But Parasite and its Oscars victory as a non-English auteur film gave Korean media a certain legitimacy and respect in the Western gaze, which now seems very eager to attribute excellence to even some quite mid pieces of Korean media. This attitude seems to carry over to other industries as well, such as when skincare brands try to give their face masks legitimacy by slapping some Korean on them, although I can always tell when they're not actually made by Koreans because of the ugly fonts that they use. But all this is at odds with the broader way that Asia as a whole is imagined in the techno-orientalist West: cheap and shoddy products, replaceable labor, and individuals. The kinds of quote-unquote excellence that is permitted to us also draws a line at the too familiar notions of yellow peril. How do we make sense of the way that Korea has come to be portrayed despite or because of the modern constructions of Asia? I'm also very curious about the way that big Korean energy seems to contrast with xenophobia.
Oh my God. So I love our listeners. Such a good question.
There's so much there.
Yeah.
How should we?
Xenophobia, we should say first, is anti-Chinese sentiment,
Mhm.
right? So, yeah.
So I think there's a couple of things there that I would feel helpful for me to kind of like piecemeal out. So
Yeah.
there's like a deep Chinese bent to this question. So the idea of like xenophobia, specifically a fear of Chinese culture, China like taking over the world. And as a American person and as a Korean person, like people should be thinking about China a lot because China is the biggest and baddest girly of them all. And I say baddest is like a compliment, right? Like there's so much to learn from this ancient culture that is massive and powerful and governs how the world works now, right? Like, and I think that, so that's one thing, is that thinking about it through like, how does Korea stand when there is like a deep fear specifically of China? And then there's the techno-orientalist piece, which is like, Asia is actually just like Blade Runner, right? That like, this is what, that it's like you go, and a lot of people say that, and I say that too, there's a way of being like, Rebecca's dad, for example, who is Rebecca and her family, my proud Korean adjacents, right? That he was on a business trip to Seoul, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and he was like, "Is this the future?" Which it actually does feel like that. Like, and that's not, I would not say that that's an Orientalist way of being. That's a way of being when you are accustomed to American exceptionalism and you have been told that everything in America is the best way that it should be. And you go to fucking Seoul and you take the subway and you're like, this maybe is the techno-Orientalist future that we all want, right? Like things are often better there in a way that seem very future seeking because we simply don't have them here. And I would argue that a lot of that is because we in America grow up with this principle of like exceptionalism that simply is not true in many, many ways. Right. But also Americans don't have the opportunity to travel and we don't prioritize that. So things that are different and better seem like they must be part of some utopian or dystopian future.
Yeah. And I do think that's also, you see that in representations, like whether it's on screen or like, I don't know, just like the stock imagery of Seoul or Singapore, right? Or Tokyo. And it just like, that vibrates.
Right.
Through.
It's like shiny and glittery and organized. And there's so many people. And for many people who I would say most Americans of any stripe, being surrounded by, in these examples, like East Asian faces is not something that you are ever, that's just simply not an experience that you ever have. I mean, frankly, for most people, right? Like when I took my kids to Korea last year, it was the first time they ever had, other than when we're with explicitly like with family or doing a Korean thing. So there's a lot of like different dimensions, I think, just in that question. The core question of like, how do we make sense of the Korean surge within all of those other elements? I think there's a couple of things. First, like the broader question is who is that meaning making for, right? Like when we say, how do we make sense of it? Is it as white Americans? Is that Korean Americans? Are we thinking of trying to make meaning for it for like our own personal identity and understanding of self and our understanding of our culture and having a relationship to that? Or is it about like how Korea sits in relationship to all of these other East Asian powers and in their relationship to America, right? So there's like multiple dimensions to that, some of which I'm better equipped to speak about than to others. But I do think that thinking about, okay, so there's the piece of the question that was like, now it seems like the Korean halo of soft power is being taken by Western or American capitalism to sell their own products, right? It's kind of being like usurped in some way. And to that, I'm like, this is what happens in capitalism. Like, to me, that is less about like a concern of loss of culture or of appropriation or of like really deep meaning making to be done there, other than the fact that like Korean shit sells. And so, of course, other companies are going to mimic that. Like, that seems like a basic rule of capitalism. It's like when Barbie was a huge success, then every Hollywood studio was like, let's make movies about toys. Like they're taking the wrong lesson, but it's the same principle, right?
Yes. Yes. What do you think about this argument about the legitimization of Korean artistry vis-a-vis this win? Because I think that like this is something you talk about in the first episode with Phil, like how that is a moment and how a lot of this stuff, like Parasite's an exception, but how there's other components of Korean culture that have become super popular in the United States that back in Korea are just like this is just like whatever television.
Yeah,
You know,
we
like
spoke at length about this, and Phil Yu, the Angry Asian Man, a incredible journalist and friend and community builder and organizer, Phil Yu, Jenny Yang, and Joanna Lee, they coined this term rep sweats. Like this was years ago, right? This idea that like when you see another Asian person anywhere out there in the world who has some sort of shine on them or spotlight, and you immediately are like, huh, are they going to embarrass us? Us, all of us, right? All billions of us that are sitting here. And the reason I bring up rep sweats in relationship to Parasite, we actually did with that episode a timeline of kind of big moments of Koreans on the global stage. And there was like the 1988 Olympics, there was the 2002 World Cup, Kim Yoo-na winning the gold medal for figure skating, Parasite, then like there's a couple of different moments with like BTS or K-pop that kind of shine. And there's lots of other, like smaller ones. Those are a lot of the big tentpole ones that come out. And I think there is a complexity, like a two truths about Parasite, for example, which is Bong Joon-ho famously was like, who cares about the Oscars? They're just like a regional award show.
I know.
Right. And that is like a beautiful statement from a man who is very confident in his skill and his talent and his status as like a global auteur. Right. He's just like, it's just the Oscars. Like it's whatever. And also it's like it is a sense of arrival or validation from a global stage. Now, I think kind of like what we often think about at Mashup and we joke about a lot is like, and this gets to the rep sweats also, is that what a fucking joy, what an arrival of real power it is to be allowed to be mediocre. Like we talk in America all the time and are very proud of like Black excellence, queer excellence. Like you want something to like we were just earlier before we started recording, talking about Zohran Mamdani and his incredible campaign, which was entirely run by women, and like all of these things, like women are so excellent, Asian excellence, Korean excellence. That is all true and should be celebrated. And actually, the real victory comes when like you don't have to be fucking excellent to be dignified and appreciated as a human being and as a culture. So I really fucking applaud when people are like, this drama on Netflix is so amazing. Have you watched it yet? And I'm like, no. I didn't like that one. Or like, I think that actor's kind of mid. Like, I don't, like, and that, what a pleasure. Like, what a gift to be like, here's actually a whole array of things. And that it turns out like, I'm like a coastal elite. Like, I love premium television or whatever. And it turns out all the most popular shows in America, the ones that are most watched regularly, are things that like I have never actually watched ever. Because halfway stuff is actually what feeds most people. And so when like somebody's like, well, can anybody ever possibly watch all like the $500 billion worth of content that Netflix has invested in Korean language television? Probably not. Is it all good? No. But like, does it all have to be excellent to be validated in any way? It shouldn't have to be, right? Like, not every movie gets an Academy Award, and they shouldn't have to. So like, I actually think that like celebrating the fact that mediocre product can exist in the world, or mid-tier, if we're talking about beauty and how, like accessible, whatever, like that actually means that a celebration of Koreanness or an acceptance or an understanding that Korean products just simply exist in the world and they're an option and you can buy them is more exemplary of the power than not.
Yes. No, that absolutely makes sense. Like the fact that it's not just Parasite, it's Parasite plus Squid Game plus K-pop Demon Hunters plus all of K-pop, which is a whole like breadth of music, right? Like K-pop is not one band.
Exactly. Well, there's so much out there. And I think that there's something, I love Trixie Mattel and I love Trixie and Katya. They are my like soothing every Monday. Like Trixie puts out a YouTube video for free, and that's like my get over my Sunday scaries because I know like that video will be coming, and I adore it. And she's always like, I'm like the Wayne Gretzky of drag. Like, if you don't know anything about drag, you probably know my name, right? Literally, and when she said that, I was like, I do know a few other drag queens, but do I literally know a name of a single other hockey player in the universe? Absolutely not. And I think that that's like what a lot of people think about Korean culture. They're like, K-pop is Blackpink or BTS.
Right.
And stop. And then they're like, what are these two groups doing and what's the big deal?
That'd be like, Justin Timberlake is pop music, like American pop music. Like,
Correct.
I hope not.
And I hope not. And also like, but that's, I think, the way that it's a way of doing exactly like the work of kind of xenophobia, xenophobia, techno-orientalism does for it. Like, it's doing it for you, being like, okay, well, Koreanness is this thing.
Yeah.
And it's this one type of thing, and it's this product or this cultural movement or this piece of art that has been widely regarded and acclaimed within a white Western audience.
Right.
And so therefore that's what it is. And we're saying no.
Yeah.
Like that, those may be groundbreaking things because ground always has to be broken here.
Yeah.
And again, this is all meaning making that's happening for Americans, right? That's what we're talking about, this surge of big Korean energy. As we like in Korea, there's no such thing as big Korean energy.
Right. Or there's no K-beauty. It's just beauty.
And there's no K-beauty. There's no, it just is.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll just say, like, I love the pairing too of like, in terms of like all the different versions and understandings of how life can be. Like, if you look at Parasite and contrast that with, say, like Past Lives, like what a vivid contrast.
Yeah.
The Culture Study Podcast is sponsored by ZocDoc. Maybe you have an appointment that you're supposed to make now that you have reached a certain age. Personally, I keep reaching these milestones and keep thinking, oh, here's another thing I have to do now that I'm even older. But sometimes the thing keeping you from making that appointment is just like administrative fatigue. Like you just feel like, and then I'm gonna have to find that person, and then I'm gonna have to like do all this work and figure out when their appointment is, and I'm not gonna know if they take my insurance. It's just a huge pain in the butt.
And making a phone call.
I like phone calls now, but yes. So if you find yourself in that position, ZocDoc is your friend. If you have a dentist appointment that you need to make for your biannual cleaning, if you are overdue for an annual checkup, if you need to make a dermatologist appointment for, I don't know, that skin thing that you've just been wanting to get checked out, you can find it all on ZocDoc. ZocDoc makes it easy to find the right doctor right now, and it's all online. So Melody does not have to make a phone call. You'll probably be able to book an appointment before the end of this ad. ZocDoc is a free app and website where you can search and compare high-quality in-network doctors and click to instantly book an appointment. With ZocDoc, you can book in-network appointments with more than 100,000 doctors across every specialty, from mental health to dental health, primary care to urgent care, and more. You can filter for doctors who take your insurance, are located nearby, are a good fit for whatever medical needs you have, and are highly rated by verified patients. Once you find the right doctor, you can see their actual appointment openings, choose a time slot that works for you, and click to instantly book a visit. Also, appointments made through ZocDoc happen fast, typically within just 24 to 72 hours of booking. More often than not, you can also find same-day appointments. So stop putting off doctor's appointments and go to ZocDoc.com/culture to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/culture. ZocDoc.com/culture. Today's episode is sponsored by Graza. Melody, did you get your Graza holiday gift bag? You didn't?
No.
Mine arrived during Thanksgiving week, so maybe it came and you didn't get it.
What did you get?
It's so cool. So it's what, if you go onto Graza, you can buy this as a gift for someone else. The official name is the dinner party pack. And you get the drizzle and the sizzle. So the one that you can put on
Your
salad.
salads.
Yeah, all sorts of things. And then
Your
also the
soup.
one that you use as your everyday olive oil. But then you also get a bottle of wine that's a collaboration with a great winery in the Willamette Valley. You get a corkscrew and you get olive oil chips. Again, this was my version, a gift sent to me by myself, essentially, of what you can send to other people. It's fantastic. If you've been listening to the podcast for any amount of time, you know how much Melody and I love Graza. Not only the fact that it is super convenient in the squeeze bottles, but it's also just fantastic olive oil. It's always fresh, never blended, made with the world's freshest olives that are picked, pressed, and bottled in the same season.
I think this is such a great gift well, obviously for the home cook, because any kind of like elevated ingredient, I think, is such a joy to use.
Also a dad.
Also a dad, for sure. A general host or hostess gift.
Yes, totally. This is like if you are coming to like your in-laws house, like your sister-in-law, and you don't know her that well, but you know that she's a little bougie. Like this would be a really great gift for that person.
Absolutely.
Right now you can get 10% off your first order on their site. I love the party pack, but you can also get the duo gift set, which you can get in glass now too. So head to graza.co/culture study and use culture study to get 10% off your order and get cooking this holiday season with some fresh, delicious olive oil. So we want to talk specifically a little bit about Korean beauty products. So this question comes from Christina.
Where did the sudden explosion of K-beauty products come from? It feels like they showed up on the scene a couple of years ago and were immediately everywhere. Personally, I love that some of the ingredients are not FDA approved. The FDA hasn't approved a new sunscreen active ingredient in over 20 years. But are K-beauty products really better, safer, or healthier than US products? And so many of the products seem focused on whitening and lightening skin. Is this just racist beauty standards repackaged?
Okay, so how do you feel about this?
Well, my short answer is no. I don't think it's just a racist repackaging of Western beauty standards. I would say it does feel like K-beauty just exploded into Western markets. Again, K-beauty is only marketed as K-beauty when it's not in Korea.
Right.
So that's one thing. The first there have been ultra premium and luxury Korean beauty products in international markets for decades.
Yes.
It becoming available in Sephora is like something that happened in the 2010s-ish. But like even before that, Korean beauty brands and formulations of Korean new technologies, like the original CC creams were all Korean. And then like Maybelline made a CC cream in like 2005 or something. I'm kind of just making that stat up.
Right.
But it was
Yeah.
So it was a Korean technology for CC cream, which now nobody really buys. Now, like Koreans are on, literally they're like on EE cream, so it's like, it's all changing. But so it's in the mass market of beauty. It has been like a 25-year growth, but in international markets generally, Korean premium products have been out forever, right? And they're owned by the same huge luxury conglomerates that own all beauty and fashion all around the world, right? There's no exception to that. I will say there is certainly a segment of any, I think, beauty marketplace and skincare marketplace that is focused on brightening and like lightening up melasma or sunspots or freckles.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. Often in Asian cultures and in Asian marketing, those are branded as whitening or lightening. I'm not like, nobody's literally trying to become white.
Right. No, this is such an important point because like my friend just started using a skin bleach that is to deal with her melasma, right? Like it's like that's specifically what it's for. But if you saw that marketed and it was and I think white people are especially like sensitive. They're like, this is upholding racist beauty standards. So like, you know what I mean? Like it's concern trolling.
This idea from like white culture.
Yeah. Yeah.
That everybody wants to be white.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know that that's true for like the billions of people in the world that aren't white. I do think there is undeniably colorism in Korean culture.
Yeah.
Right? The way that there is colorism in virtually every culture in this godforsaken little planet that we live on, right? So there certainly is like, oh, to be fair, to be pale. Like in India, there's a terrible and legendary product called Fair and Lovely.
Yeah.
Like, and so that exists, certainly. The idea of having porcelain skin, again, exists in every culture and also exists in whiteness.
Yeah.
Right? To be celebrated for having a perfect porcelain complexion. That is not unique. And so I don't believe that this is about carrying on racist standards. A lot of it is about labeling. A lot of it is marketing. A lot of it is what you define what like whitening or brightening is for your skin. And I would also then just caution or gently suggest that when coming up against this and being like, well, why would Korean people want to look whiter? Or why are Korean that it's not actually about centering white people or a white beauty standard. And there's a lot that people will say. I think, it's almost like for me, growing up as a child of like the 80s in the Midwest, like my kind of immediate beauty role models or standards was always about like the heroin chic of it all. And there will always be elements of me personally as a 46-year-old woman in America as a minority that is like, wouldn't it be nice if I did have like rounder and wider eyes? Or like, what would it be like to be more kind of archetypally, standardly beautiful in an American way? And I think now as a grown person is that like I've evolved and grown, beauty standards have evolved and grown, and how I perceive what Korean standards of beauty are, because every culture has them, is that they're trying to meet their own, for better or for worse, right?
Yeah.
And all of those things are always shifting. So it's a matter of like kind of decentering yourself in that and just being able to be like, oh, this is a beautiful product that feels good or works or whatever. To the idea that like, are they actually better or safer? Like the FDA is an antiquated and currently deeply broken and basically non-existent system. And it's true. Like they have not approved new ingredients that have been approved in the EU, across Asia. Kind of the standards for safety and health and ingredient testing are significantly higher in Korea than they are in the US. So I always feel very, very safe and good buying the products. And we talk about this. One of our guests in the season is Joanne Lee Molinaro, also known as the Korean vegan, who
I love that episode.
She's so great. She's so brilliant.
She's your friend. She's like,
I know. She's my friend from high school. It's so fun. Also, it's very funny. If you see us together, we're sisters. And also I'm 5'7" and like chesty and like she's maybe 5 feet. Like we're just two different archetypes of Korean people. And it's like, it's a good, but like, we talked a lot for her. So much is all of her work is about sourcing food and ingredients and kind of getting back into nature with what we're putting in our bodies and what we're putting on our faces. And there's always been a philosophy in Korean culture that beauty comes from the inside as well. So like thinking about ingredients on your face that we play a great game with her, food or face, is that like, is something meant for your face beauty or for like your inside beauty? And in Korean culture, those are very intertwined, which just to me speak to like kind of how I want to manage my health and my body.
Totally. Okay, next up, we have a lot of readers in our community, and I think that this speaks to something that I have also experienced over the last decade. So this question comes from Julie.
My book club, comprised of highly educated white and Latino women in the Midwest, has taken a crash course / seminar in the past 2 years on Korean women and the Korean diaspora, all through very mainstream popular books like Flashlight, Pachinko, The Island of the Sea Women, etc. This was not intentional, but we've loved it. How did this happen that this is a topic publishers care about right now?
I love that.
I know, right?
I love that question. I love that it's happening. I love that she's like me and my white and Latina friends. I love everything about it.
I just know that a lot of people who read a certain like subset of literary fiction in their book clubs or on their own, whatever, like know a lot more about the Japanese occupation of Korea than they did 10 years ago. Like It's just there is a lot more knowledge.
It's heavy on the mind.
I know, and it reminds me actually of I read, I don't know, it's probably 5 or 6 years ago. I read "Say Nothing" by Patrick Radden Keefe. And I had taken actual seminars on Irish literature, so I knew a lot about the Troubles. But having just read Say Nothing, then I could read Milkman, which had just won the Booker Prize, which is a stream of consciousness about a novel about a certain time in the early 80s during the Troubles. And everything puzzle pieced together in a way that was incredibly effective and enriched both texts. And I think I just read Flashlight, and having read Pachinko and Island of Sea Women, I was like, oh, I know some things about this.
It's so great.
And I do think that you said in your first episode, and you said earlier in this episode, that there is this feeling that in America, a lot of, at least white Americans or people who aren't Asian American would there just wasn't a visibility of Koreanness, and now I think there's just a lot more awareness of history. Does that feel right, or does that feel like a surface level observation?
I think it feels right, and then there's a combination of factors, right? So similar to Parasite or Squid Game, or similar to, I would say Hyungmin's Son being no, Korean athletes are really athletes.
Yeah.
That can play in Europe, right? Or just there's a groundbreakingness. And I think we did, first of all, Min Jin Lee is a fucking goddess.
She is.
And so any opportunity that I have to talk about her and her goddess-like qualities is wonderful. But Susan Choi, these are American women that are writing, right? So we're not talking about Korean writers in translation who are also making a splash. Han Kang just won the Nobel Prize last year. And I think, we asked, we had many writers on the series, Aro Kwan. We have had Min Jin as a guest on the Mashup Americans in the past. Yep. And it's interesting. We asked everybody to name kind of their big Korean energy reads. And almost everybody, all of the younger writers, even 10 years younger, are naming Min Jin.
Yeah.
A lot of them are naming Susan Choi, the author of Flashlight. I have not read Isle of Sea Women, but that is written by a white Chinese woman.
Yeah.
About Korean culture. And I think there's a way in which it's not quite the Overton window. Yeah. Things did shift a little, but it's also publishers are doing the same thing that movie producers are doing, right? They're oh, there was a hit. Or The Incendiaries came out and won all these awards, and Aro Kwan is a genius. So maybe we can also have another Korean American writer who writes about sex and religion and can get kind of in it. And then there's a challenge also when there's also oh, but we already had our Aro Kwan, right? So all of that is all happening all at once. Yeah. And part of that is just industry pressure and the book publishers being just brave enough to being I'm going to let this one extraordinary talent through the door.
Yeah.
And now we've done one. So that's good enough.
And I think the Overton window point is good, though, because it also, I think, alongside the popularity of these books, I remember a couple years ago, there was this book that was super popular with culture study readers. I read it. It's called, I think, Kim Ji-young, Born 1982. Oh, it's the book that was written by a Korean woman about her life in Korea and about how stifling it was. But I think a lot of people were like, oh, I'll read this.
Yeah.
And it was in translation. So, and it offers a different window too. And I think a darker window, right? Into what contemporary Korean culture is for women in particular. And thinking too about
So I think how did it happen? It happened the same way that all this other stuff happened, which is that there was one that paved the way. Yeah. And then the industry and popular appetite, all of those things kind of come up paired with fucking excellence.
Yeah.
That then you're oh, there's so many, right? One thing that I want to say that feels really important to emphasize is that, and we talk about this in the pod, I think we'll get this, deeper into this conversation, is that none of this is by accident, right? The Korean government for generations, essentially since the recovery, since they had democracy, which by the way, most people don't know that happened like in the late 80s.
Yeah,
right?
Very recent.
Very recent. All of this is very new, but one of the big pushes was to say, we are going to push culture around the world because we are a tiny nation. Like, to put in the context of the xenophobia that we were talking about earlier, like if you look at a map of Asia, like abroad, it's almost impossible to find Korea because it just looks like a baby toe coming off of China. Honestly, like it's just
Maine.
like tiny
it's
little
like Maine
place,
coming
right?
off of China. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like all of this stuff that has like that people call the Hallyu wave, like this Korean wave, it came from deep, deep, deep investments in Korean soft power. The same time that Korea was putting deep, deep, deep investments in simply rebuilding the country after fucking war, occupation, and a military junta. You know, so like all of this was happening at once, and it's almost like being able to watch a modern culture build itself. And luckily for all of us is that the culture was good. The output was good. The art is good. The food is good. Everything is delicious and wonderful, and you want to take it in. And so when all of these things, both the intentionality, the government investment, meeting a hungry American market that is changing. And again, we're talking about all of this from an American context and from an American seat. People around the world receive this very differently, and Koreans in Korea receive this all very differently, is you're going to get something that seems like a magical opening overnight of like all of these authors. And the discovery is so beautiful to watch. And I want everybody to know that I think a lot of people would say that and somehow be skeptical that therefore this art or this power is not, I'm using air quotes for our listeners, is not real because it was in part engineered by the government. What do we think anything is?
And this all reminds me of like the production of so much Hollywood content, television, radio, like throughout the course of the post-World War II period that was sent all over the world with a very specific purpose in mind. And part of it was very explicitly tied to the Cold War, but some of it was just like ideological, like exportation, like triumph of democracy and like, I don't know, America is good. Like those sorts of ideas were very
much a real
much
marketing campaign. I don't know if we lived up to our promise on that one. I feel like Parasite lived up to its fucking promise.
I mean, the point here is that like soft power is not new in any way, and it has been wielded in so many different ways by so many different countries, and sometimes for good and sometimes for not
and I
good.
do think that, you know, we get into this in the BKE series, but that there's a reason why the investment in soft power is so important, right? There's a reason why Koreans deep in our soul feel the need to like have public excellence.
Mm-hmm.
And that is about being a colonized nation. That is about being a nation in war with an occupying American military. Like that, it is about staking a claim in the world stage. And the world stage, as we know, is at its core a theater in which you need to be an actor that has all the lines, right? Or a lot of the lines, or at least a part to play. And I think that that is what the build and the push was about in the 80s when this started. And it has just snowballed and snowballed. And I think like anything, this is now where we're seeing a moment where it is happening at a level of cultural saturation that like people who are unexpected and have or aren't looking for it, that it's arriving on their doorstep and they're having a discovery of it and now feeling like everything in Sephora is Korean. Everything in my book club is suddenly Korean. I maybe don't have any Korean friends, but what is happening and why is my child dressed up as Rumi?
This is a great setup to our next question. So we're going to continue this conversation in our conversation about K-pop demon hunters. So we're going to read the first question from Natalie, and then I'm going to summarize another question that we got afterwards.
Okay.
I'm curious how Koreans view the sudden global fascination with K-pop demon hunters. K-pop has been popular for years, but this definitely seems like a new level of mainstream attention, and among people who aren't necessarily familiar with K-pop more broadly. I swear half the Halloween costumes I saw this year were inspired by the movie. How is this trend perceived among Koreans, especially in terms of authenticity, cultural representation, and how connected or not it feels to actual K-pop or Korean culture?
And then the second question we got, and we got a couple of variations on this, was whether it's okay to dress up as characters from K-pop demon hunters if you are not Asian. Like, is it yellowface? And one of the question askers was like, I'm particularly sensitive to this because, like, my kid is half Chinese and I just think about it. And also that there have been a lot of conversations about, like, Scarlett Johansson playing an Asian character on screen, and, like, we decided it wasn't a good thing. So let's start with, what do Koreans think about the current obsession with K-pop demon hunters? And I love the fact, like, the obsession really runs through the season of Big Korean Energy, and how it just keeps coming back. You're like, oh my god, this series is actually just about shame. Like, it's
so Korean. It's so Korean.
Yeah. So okay, can you give us some thoughts on this, just generally?
Yes. So I don't have, all the Koreans in Korea,
I know,
like
every
on my
Korean.
phone. And I do
Please
think,
tell us.
and we want to preface this all by saying, like, Rebecca and I are observers of American culture, much as you are. I am Korean American, and I also don't live in Korea. I have lived my 46 years in the US with a few years popping back and like maybe a cumulative of 1 year living my life in Korea. I will say, for most things like Parasite, like Squid Game, like K-pop demon hunters, even like BTS, they're popular to some Koreans and popular to not. And most Korean people are like, that? Like, that's the thing? Like, you're like, oh, okay. Or just like, oh, that's crazy. I haven't watched that yet.
Yeah.
And in a recent, like, media consumption survey on international audiences, like, Korean consumers generally consume, it's like 80% of their content is Korean. Like, they're not watching a ton of shit in translation. They're watching for us, by us Korean content, right? K-pop Demon Hunters is an explicitly Korean diaspora film. K-pop Demon Hunters was written by a diaspora Korean woman who grew up in Canada, Maggie King, who went back to Korea like every summer. And so her writing partner is a white dude. And so looking at the way that K-pop Demon Hunters resonates around the world, right? And it's not just with Korean diaspora people. Like, it was, my husband is Colombian, and we were traveling in Colombia this summer with our family. And, like, our little Colombian niece watched K-pop Demon Hunters with Spanish subtitles with my kids, you know? Like, it was a global phenomenon, but it is a look, an outsider's look in some way into Korean fandom and Korean culture, like an inside-outside point of view.
Yes.
Which is all to say that it's a very nuanced and complicated look at what it means to, like, observe and enjoy Korean culture, much more so than, like, what Korean people may make a satire that they would make about their own culture.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that's an important distinction to make. This was not a Korean film, right? This was a diaspora Korean film, and it's fucking genius. Now, to the question of the Halloweenness of it all, right? Like, and I understand, particularly for somebody who is raising a Chinese kid, I would wonder whether or not the person, the culture study reader who wrote the question, is like the Chinese part of the equation or not. Is that, like, there's a way in which we have been taught that any sort of anything akin to, like, the dirty word of appropriation is so dangerous and bad, B-A-D, bad, right? Now, I think that there's a lot more nuance in that. Blackface is bad. Yellowface is bad. Like, we know this, right? I would guess, I would hope and pray that 90%, 95%, I really hope it's 100% of children in particular who are dressed up as Rumi or Mira or one of the Saja boys, they're not, like, taping their eyes to look more Asian.
Exactly.
They're not wearing some form of, like, Asian makeup, right? Like a yellow face, the way that traditionally like blackface or minstrelly was done. Like this is not the same thing. People dressing as a fictional character because they identify with this character is very different than like, say, what I grew up with when somebody would dress up as a Chinese person.
Right.
Or like a Chinaman and would somehow have like a straw rice hat
and
or
tape
something.
their eyelids and like just like like it is minstrelsy in those situations, right?
Exactly. So I don't see that there. I think there is nuance there, and I also think of and this is a messy one because nobody wants to be the one representative person that is gonna like speak for a monolith. But one of the questions I think one could ask themselves is like, is a Korean person offended by this? And not one Korean person I know is offended by the millions of people dressed as Rumi.
I will say that the hundreds of costumes that I saw, like online and just like running around the island, that sort of thing, it was all about like the wig and the persona. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Or like being a pop star.
Yeah, totally.
Or being a superhero, right? Like these are all the things that like people painting the patterns or, it's really about the ponytail.
Yeah.
It's about the braid,
It's totally about the ponytail. Did you see that? Robin Arzon from Peloton even wore it. She had the costume for like it might have been for Halloween or it might have been like a specific K-pop Demon Hunters ride. She loves
so
that
good.
Sort of thing. That's very her.
Good.
Yeah.
And I also think that like that film tells a really authentic story about Korean culture. And about some of the deep, deep themes that are also tied into everything else about this need for excellence, this need for perfection, because that's rooted in kind of a generational trauma that Korean culture is recovering from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so that's also part of it. And it feels like, it feels very, how do you say, like throwing
the baby out with the bathwater.
No, I thought more like incepting. It's like sending like this like big deep message under the cover of K-pop.
Yeah. No. I thought you were talking about like if you reject like, oh, your kid can't wear this costume. They would be throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I do like this. Just reminds me. I think sometimes we've come up with ways of reacting to something that were created for a time when we had to react really forcefully because the performances, like something like blackface or yellowface, like it was so egregious that you had to be like, no, this is just wrong, right?
Yeah.
And so now that we're past that point, except Republicans or conservatives are doing this like very purposefully just to like be like, I'm owning the libs by like wearing blackface or whatever. I think that we now are at the second level of questioning.
Yeah, I think that right now we're in a place that we can have, that there's like a little bit of room and permission for nuance.
Yeah.
Like if you're lucky enough to be invited to a friend's wedding in India, it turns out any Indian friend's wedding, because anything that involves Indianness at all becomes Indian, is that like you wear the fucking sari. If you're invited to, you do it. And whatever like preconceived notion you may have had about being like, it feels inappropriate or wrong to wear this, but you are now being invited in by a family and by a culture to do this. That is what I think is actually maybe, to get back to the earlier question about how does Korea, or like understanding what Korean culture and the Korean government did differently maybe than the fear that was generated by Japanese soft power, or the fear that is generated by Chinese soft and hard, every kind of power, is that Korean culture invites international ideas in. And I think that there's a way in which there's a lot of different interpretations of that. There's a lot of meaning making that can come from that, some of which is like, this is very calculated, this is very tactical, or is this going to actually erase authentic Korean culture? But I actually think it's like a global way of living and creating culture day by day that is very, very modern and actually allows for incorporation of new ideas and less fearfulness. Like, wouldn't it be great if America did that?
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. And also fantastic job bringing my point from before that was just dangling out there. Like, thank you for bringing it back. I can tell you're a podcaster. The Culture Study Podcast is sponsored by Mosh. Melody, you have a Mosh story to share.
Yeah, I have a new use case for mosh bars.
Yes.
I have discovered that when I'm traveling, it is so hard for me to get out of the hotel room in the morning to either go get the free breakfast or like go searching for breakfast. Because I just feel I'm too weak. I'm too sleepy. I need to drink coffee, but I can't do it on an empty stomach. And my last work trip, I brought some mosh bars with me and I ate them in my hotel bed, and they were a perfect way to start the day and to give me the little boost I needed to go foraging for the rest of my meals.
Well, and this will help prevent scenarios like the one that you told me about from, I think, a month ago, where it was 7 p.m. at night and you hadn't had any food.
Yes.
Because you missed hotel breakfast.
I did. And I was told there would be lunch, and then there wasn't lunch.
You know, I watch my friends with kids, like they always have a bar. They always have like fruit leather. They always have something trying to avoid going off that cliff. And adults need that more than we like to admit. And the mosh bar is like the perfect size. It's not so overwhelming that you feel like, oh my gosh, I ate that. I can't. Like it's a snack. It's a perfect snack. Or like pre-breakfast, as you said. Mosh also donates a portion of all proceeds from your order to fund gender-based brain health research through the Women's Alzheimer movement. Why gender-based? Because 2/3 of all people with Alzheimer's are women. Mosh is working closely to close the gap between women's and men's health research. If you want to find ways to give back to others and fuel your body and your brain, Mosh bars are the perfect choice for you. Head to moshlife.com/culture to save 20% off plus free shipping on the Bestsellers Trial Pack or the new Plant-Based Trial Pack. That's 20% off plus free shipping on either the Bestsellers Trial Pack or the Plant-Based Trial Pack at moshlife.com/culture. Thank you, Mosh, for sponsoring this episode. Today's episode is sponsored by Remy. So this week in the Ask Ann Anything segment, Melody and I talked about some scenarios that could make you grind your teeth at night during the holidays. Just like overarching stress of being around people all the time when you're not used to it. For people who are experiencing that sort of stress or who have it in the rest of their lives, just like stuff that makes you grind your teeth and not even really realize it, just like feel it in the morning. There's just like everything is clenched into your jaw. If you have that feeling, you're not alone. Approximately 30% of U.S. adults grind or clench their teeth at night. But Remy makes custom night guards that are clinically tested to prevent teeth grinding, reduce jaw tension and facial muscle strain, and improve sleep quality. You'll get the same professional quality and comfort as a night guard from the dentist, but Remy costs you 80% less and is much more convenient than having to go into the dentist's office. And as an added cost benefit, you can use your HSA, FSA benefits towards your night guard at checkout. Here's how it works. It's very straightforward. You receive your impression kit, comes straight to your door. You follow the step-by-step instructions to get your perfect impression, and then Remy crafts and ships you your custom-fit night guard. Then you get your night guard back and you start protecting your teeth, and you wake up and your face feels less like you have contorted it into like a stress ball over the course of the entire night. For the holiday season, Remy is gifting their customers with their 2-in-1 foam that both cleans your night guard and whitens your teeth for free when you order a night guard between now and December 24th. Go to shopremy.com/culture and use code CULTURE to receive 55% off your new night guard plus a free foam gift. That's shopremi.com/culture for 55% off a night guard plus free gift using code CULTURE. Thank you, Remy, for sponsoring this episode. For our last question, don't worry, it's a really hard one. It's going to close us out, and it comes from Gemma.
I'd love to hear your thoughts on if and how the Korean wave affects the American perception of North Korea. I'm Gen Z, and I grew up with Kim Jong-un memes and The Interview, and also with Gangnam Style, influencing how my classmates understood me being Korean. Almost all of Korean culture's rise in the US is very South Korean hyper-capitalist. K-dramas, K-pop, skincare, except for maybe food like kimchi or gochujang. The peninsula's division is recent enough that my grandmother was born in North Korea before it was North Korea, but the cultures and language are now so divided that reunification is disappearing as an option if the Korean conflict ever ends. What does it mean for us as Americans to grow our understanding of Korean culture when it's defined by only one of the two Koreas?
Oh, that's so good.
I know,
And
right?
also like really painful. That's a big one. So we talk about this a lot in this season of BKE on Mashup Americans. And one thing that first, just for context for culture study listeners, is just to remember like there was no North Korea before 1953. This is an entity that was created by America, Russia, and China. It's like a colonial input onto the peninsula. So I am not Gen Z, though you couldn't tell from my voice. I was born in 1979 and my father was born in Pyongyang. Like I personally, part of my growth and kind of my consciousness raising as a Korean American person has been to understand that like North and South Korea is an American colonial and imperial construct, right? Like this is not something that existed before. And so like her grandmother was born in North Korea. My father was born in North Korea. He was born in Pyongyang. He and his family refugeed south and then stayed on a refugee camp on one of the islands. Korea is scattered. The peninsula is just like dotted with tiny little islands everywhere. And then eventually his family settled in Busan, which is a southern coastal like fishing city. Now it's like a major metropolitan, but he called it like a fishing city back in the 40s. And my mother grew up in kind of the central part of what is now South Korea. So the idea of a North and South is very, very new. It's very, very American. And it was also like, I completely can relate to those stereotypes because I think there was a long time because of what it meant to be Korean, maybe less so in her generation, but in mine, is that like when my family came here, a lot of the things that like my dad in particular, I think faced was like really explicitly needing to tell people that he wasn't Vietnamese because the Vietnam War was so unpopular, right? Like in the 70s. And like that was kind of the hangover and the image of Asia that was in existence like when I was a kid. Right. That said, I think it's really important for a Korean question asker in this context to think about whether or not is she trying to understand what it means to be Korean for her or what it means for her to have other people look at her and being perceived as Korean. Because to me, the existence of North Korea, the fucking absolute tragedy of the split in this country to divide North and South, and now the deep and what is becoming like a politically impossible divide to cross, right, is reunification. And I think to me that tragedy and that split is representative of kind of all of the forces that we have been talking about, right? Like imperial and colonial forces in Korea that have created this need for South Korea to become this like powerhouse, right? And also in some ways the opportunity that it took and it had to rebuild itself entirely after the war. Yeah. And so to me, like the tragedy and understanding the split, the absolute horror that the split has made and the rip in families and culture, and the fact that like most like what she's referencing at least are humiliating jokes about Korean culture. Yeah. I grew up at a different time, but like in my 20s was like, it was a time when every meme was like Kim, I don't know if you guys remember this, but it was Kim Jong-un looking at things. Yeah. And it would just be him looking at things, right? And it was like
his, like his haircut and his clothes and like,
him being fat and not looking like a military war hero or whatever. You know, like that whole thing was a joke. Gangnam Style is different. Like Psy is actually like a cultural genius that like created a satire of himself when he did that, and it took the world by storm. It was received differently in America, who they didn't have enough cultural context to understand that it was a satire. Yeah. Right? They just thought he was this foolish kind of chubby Korean man making jokes of himself. Right. So it's in some ways challenging for me to relate to this question because I try not to trouble myself or really care about what white America's perception of me as a Korean person because of their understanding of North Korea is. It deeply concerns me what the Korean American diaspora understands about themselves and what they hope for their own identity building here in the US, and whatever relationship they have to like an ancestral home or a cultural home, and that their understanding of what has happened in Korea is not about North and South Korea being so different or having two such different cultures, which they have, right? It's like twins that are separated at birth.
Right,
like,
but one has been disappeared, right? Like, and that's the really sad thing.
That's the tragedy.
It's not like, oh, well, like this country was divided and now like this, like we have a visible representation of what it's like in one country and one in another. Like North Koreans can't represent themselves,
right?
Because of the way that like the media works and like the way any sort of visibility works. Like it's just been like submerged.
Yeah. And I think that's actually something like what you see playing out at a lot of different, it comes and goes as like a kind of a political topic in Korea.
Yeah.
But that the idea that right now, and this is like an undercurrent, is that they're so far apart, right? Economically, resource-wise, health-wise,
Yes.
like language-wise, that like, why should South Korea take in all these refugees? Like, what a drain it'll be on the economy. What a drain it'll be on all of our resources that we have built and that are ours. Now, like, does that sound fucking familiar to you?
I know, right?
Like,
right.
And I think that that's the thing that gets played out again and again. You see it. It's not a uniquely American thing. It's not a uniquely Korean thing. But like, how do we kind of broadly think about how we got to this moment and who it is we are like, quote, letting in or needing to help when we open up our doors. And it's just fucking us. In Korea, it's like a kind of an easier example because they're literally the same people that have been divided and separated. And you can see what economic and political forces have done to two different populations of people that are actually one.
Yes.
But that is also what's happening at our borders. That's also what's happening, like why Brexit fucking happened, and it's this idea that like we cannot help each other because it's just too scarce. Like we did this, it's ours now, and we can't afford to help anybody else.
Yeah.
And so I think like diving into those questions, I know personally has helped me care much less what anybody might perceive of me as a Korean person, because North Korea is often made as either like a nuclear nightmare or a joke.
Right.
And I'm like, well, you can think that.
I'm returning to the very end of this question, which Gemma asks, what does it mean for us as Americans to grow our understanding of Korean culture when it is defined by only one of the Koreas? And like you answered that just a second ago when you said like, oh, this is happening here too.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's part of what it means to look at that understanding, is to see the ways in which it reflects the cultural tensions, the way that the discourse works around this, like the exporting of one culture and then invisibilizing of another. Like it's also happening here.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just think that, this is kind of the core principle of the Mashup Americans. And I think what we hope gets to the nuance of things, and we hope pushes our kind of conversations past, you can't do this because it's yellow face, right? Or like, this is clearly cultural appropriation, or this is a right way of looking at Korea, and if you brighten your skin, then it's racist, right? Like, and I'm not saying that those questions are wrong or bad. It's that I think that we can push them forward, because the porousness, if we can both like deeply understand, appreciate, and reflect back another culture, the more you realize you're like, oh, we're all doing this.
Right. No, and even just like the idea too, I love like you were talking in one episode about how many Korean producers were in a document.
Oh my
like
God.
asking
it was
how,
really stressful.
like which honorific to use. But like for me, as a person who's not Korean listening in, having other Korean people talk to one another and share different perspectives from like, and this is what it was like growing up with a strong church background. And this is what it was like growing up with thick hair. And this is what it was like growing up with thin hair, which like, duh, people are different, but just like pounding that home again and again, like that is an incredibly valuable experience for anyone. And And I love this show so much, and we're going to direct people to go over and listen. Each episode is a perfect length for like cooking dinner, going on a dog walk. They're amazing.
Thank you so much. I feel very seen and validated right now.
Good. Amy, since I teed you up, first of all, thank you for answering these very complex questions. You're an all-star.
You're welcome.
Where can people find you and Mashed Up Americans on the internet if they want to find more?
You can find our website is themasheupamericans.com. It is getting a little makeover right now, so new stuff to come. Our podcast is available wherever you get your podcasts. It's called The Mashed Up Americans. We've been in this podcast land since 2015, so there's a lot of episodes that are all kind of like this. We also have a, dare I say it, a Substack.
You're allowed to say Substack on the pod. We welcome all newsletters. Come back to Patreon. It's good. It's good over there.
Well, after you've paid for Anne's Patreon, then you can also go back to Substack, and we have a weekly newsletter that comes out on Saturdays. It's kind of news from around the world with this lens. We also have a section of our newsletter that we called terrible, no good, very bad news, that we're trying not to be depressed, but we do want to be informed. So that's at the bottom of our newsletter, and the rest is kind of like deep, rich, delicious, mashy conversations and articles that we're sourcing. And then it could not be a weirder time to be doing narrative change work that focuses on the richness and beauty of like what it means to be American today, when maybe it's illegal to be us right now.
Right.
But we're still doing it, and we feel like it's the most important thing that we can be doing. So we're so excited that we got to be with you today on Culture Study, and I hope that Culture Study readers and listeners have fun with their BKE.
Thank you again. This has been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Culture Study Podcast. Today, paid subscribers got an Ask Anne Anything conversation about why being with family at the holidays always feels like a lot, and whether there's anything that can be done about that. Melody and I have some thoughts. So if you want to support the show and get bonus content, head to patreon.com/culturestudy. It's just $5 a month or $50 a year, and you'll get ad-free episodes, an exclusive advice time segment, and weekly discussion threads for each episode. Also, if you're already a subscriber at the newsletter level, you can just up your subscription to the combo newsletter podcast level. It's very easy now that we're over at Patreon. Also, please subscribe to Culture Study Podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We have so many great episodes in the works, and I promise you don't want to miss any of them. Subscribing, like actually clicking that little box in your podcast app, really helps other people find the show, and we really appreciate it. And if you want to suggest a topic or ask a question about the culture that surrounds you, or submit a question for our subscriber-only advice time segment, go to our Google form at tinyurl.com/culturestudypod or check the show notes for a link. The Culture Study Podcast is produced by me, Anne Helen Peterson, and Melody Rowell. Our music is by Poddington Bear. You can find me on Instagram at Anne Helen Peterson, Melody at Melodious47, and the show at Culture Study Pod.